So we have another interview of Baradwaj Rangan with Anjali Menon, a well-known filmmaker from Malayalam industry. And her latest film Wonder Woman is coming out. So I think that's what they're going to talk about and more. If you haven't seen the original video, I'll put the link in the description. Go check it out on Galata Plus and let's watch it.
Hello, Anjali Menon, and welcome to Galata Plus.
Thank you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to meet you, but apparently not so for a few people because Prithviraj said it's excruciating to work with you. So why
I remember
so?
that interview.
Funny enough, we're still in touch. Happy to be so. I think he was referring to my process, maybe. It's not something that when we worked together, it was not something he was familiar with. So it took a little time for him to sort of come around and understand it, possibly.
What is that process?
It's a process of collaborating and drawing in energies to try and convey the story through the character.
Right. Now, getting a little more specific, let's say you have a scene where Prithviraj has to do something sad. How would you convey that to him? Like, what is the thing that is so different for him that he found it excruciating?
I don't usually, tell people, okay, this is the point I need to get to. That is not usually the way. I would tell them the situation, and they know the character arc, they know the story, and they have to find it within them to react and respond to what is going on. So I think that is maybe what he was referring to.
That's one way, like I think every director has their own way of doing it. Some people just want this exact thing what they have in their mind, and that's what the actors should do. Some people just, as she said, right? The situation I have, you are told you are playing this character, this is the situation. How would the character react? And they know the script, they know how it has to be done, but in a natural progression, right? And then there are some, who just whatever you do, it's just what is your interpretation? Let's see. So and there's a mixture overlap of all this with different directors. And I've seen Kude, and know the interview where Prithviraj talked about this excruciating experience on the set. And I think Kude was a very, very different film for Prithviraj, and I really liked that film. I had some issues if I remember correctly, but yeah, it was a good one.
And it's not about getting them to do what I want. No, I'm exploring the character through them.
Right.
So they are my conduits. I'm trying to swim in a certain direction, and they will take me there. So in that moment, I think actors don't have an easy job. They're the ones who are inside out on the set, and they have to respond from a very deep place to whatever is going on. And in that moment, we will discover together where this is headed. So that my job is only to find that most honest moment. That's my only job. So the rest is their doing. So I can only prepare the ground and lay it out and say, now walk and do your thing. So it's up to them to take me there. And my only contribution can be to gently guide them in that direction.
You have quietly, without telling anybody, made a movie called Wonder Woman. Where were the giant ads, the billboards, the advertisements?
I have to say, like, when this announcement happened, I think Parvati teased it on her social media, something big is coming, something like that. I thought, okay, a big movie is coming out. Then they announced this movie, and like, okay, such a big cast, they're gonna, now start shooting, and there's an announcement that film is happening. In the next 6 months, we'll get to see it. 2 days later, trailer is out. I'm like, what? When? Like, no news, no buzz. I heard nothing about this. So either like I was ignorant of this, or no one knew about it.
Anjali Menon launches a new movie. Where was all that?
They're never there. By now you should know. I get very, how does one say? I get very perturbed when there's too much attention on anything. I'd rather just go into a shell, be in a quiet corner and do our work.
Right.
This attention is unwanted until, the product is ready. Till then, it's like Pitch said, we're exploring, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult to define it and talk about it before that.
We'll get to that in a moment, but before that, I have two questions. One is, do you have a favorite among your films?
No.
No.
Not at all.
Okay.
Favorite is what is yet to be made.
The second thing is your screenwriting process, because your films, there's 2008, Manjari Kuru, 2014, Bangalore Days, 2018.
I don't seen the
There's a lot
first
of
one.
time in between the films, and I'm sure there are other things as well. But I think you take a lot of time with the writing. Uh, about a year, maybe.
Easily.
Easily. Okay.
Easily.
Yeah. So, what is that process?
When there's a certain subject which is interesting, it'll come to my attention in bits and pieces, and I'll collect these pieces and it'll stay there. And very often my attention span is not great, so I get bored very soon. Very often, it just comes and it goes, and that's it. But there are some things which just stay, and they sort of niggle at your head, and they say, hey, look at me, and talk to me. Those are the subjects that I'm more intrigued by. And then one starts to gather more information, one starts to try to understand a certain milieu. And I think the subject kind of talks to you.
Okay.
And when that connect is formed, when I feel there is something that is in this that I would like to present in my way, when there is something that I can contribute to, that is when I'm actually committing to doing something about it. And I do not write until I'm bursting to write. Because
Till then, it's all in your head.
yeah,
Or did you jot on?
nothing,
Okay.
nothing, because
That's very interesting. I don't know why. I just, whenever I'm watching these interviews, my head start thinking about what I do. How do I write the ideas? Like, I just write a one liner, and then I just forget about it. Like, that one liner is so strong that, if I've like thought about a story and everything, and then that one line is enough for, if I read it again, everything will come back. So that's what I do. Again, I had not written any story, full on stories and scripts and nothing like that yet. I just ideas I just keep jotting down. So that's interesting. She doesn't write anything, and just when she feels like it's all coming together, she just writes one at once.
there are so many narratives that come and go, right? So it's you're testing yourself as well. Are you ready to commit? And when you do commit, because then everything else ceases, right? It's only that. So there's a certain energy you put into it, a certain focus you put into it, and for me that's a lot. So to arrive at that, it takes a little time. So it's not like the years in between these films I'm sitting and writing. No, I'm not. It's a lot of time to even arrive at a subject that you want.
Right, but when you do decide to write, there's a specific process which we were just talking about before this interview.
Yeah.
So, do you want to just talk about that?
See, usually these subjects come
Why were you talking about before the interview? That's not how it's. Just kidding.
to me in certain scenes, certain characters, certain moments. Let's call it moments, right? So I usually prefer to, maybe I'll put down like a little synopsis somewhere, but it'll be a very fluid one without like a real ending or anything. It'll be just touching the subject, just for me to have it in my head what this is. But it's in the screenplay writing that I'm actually finding my narrative. And when I say screenplay, for me, it is full screenplay with dialogue.
Okay.
So it's, you start with your location, you go into the action, and this will keep evolving. There'll be so many drafts, right? But that first screenplay draft is where I really find my story.
Right.
I think every writer has a different form in which they find their story. So for me, it is definitely the screenplay. And in that screenplay is when I meet the characters, and when they start going off in directions I did not anticipate. Sometimes it's in the dialogue, when the way someone speaks, you realize, oh, okay, maybe they're from this place, and maybe they're not from that place. And what are the dynamics? So it's a, for me,
Basically, fleshing out the character, right? Where they belong, where they come from, all
it's
of
a
that.
much more instinctive form, the screenplay.
Right.
And later is when the craft sort of kicks in. I think the logical, analytical writing, which I think is much more to do with structure. So I separate out the processes. For me, the creative, instinctive part is the screenplay, and that is usually written in a linear form. And after that, it is from that I sort of cull out my your step outline, or whatever it is you like to call it. And then there's this sort of shuffling that happens with scenes about, is this the best way to tell this story? Do I want to give the end first and then the middle, then the beginning? Where do I want to go back into another narrative loop? Do I want to tell this through this particular perspective? In Kude, for example, we needed to give a little backstory about Jenny. And throughout the film, till that point, we have seen Jenny as only part of Joshua's imagination. It's what he thinks of her. It's not the real her. So when you really want to see the real her, how do I show it? So it needed to be something that she had documented herself. And therefore, when he reads her diaries, when he gets a real sense, so you will see even the characterization there is very different from how you've seen her till then. And once he's got that realization, from that point on, her character is more towards that area. So it's at which point does a character get to know about something? These are all things we can position.
Right.
And I think that enriches the experience of a narrative. So when I'm telling the story if I'm telling it to a 2-year-old child, it'll be different from when I'm telling it to an 8-year-old child. So I will naturally position myself, position my body, my voice, my whole, storytelling to bring that child into the center of the narrative. I think that's what we try to do with the audiences as well.
Yeah.
We want them to be in the center. We want them to journey with us.
Right.
And I think our narration in a film is actually laying the path for that. So much about the structure is to do with that. What gives the best dramatic potential, I would think, and it's a constant discovery.
Sure.
So this form will go on evolving until the shoot date, and then after the shoot date, it'll continue evolving through the edit. So yeah.
So just to put it in a nutshell, you write moments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is in whatever order, and then you say, I need to put these moments in a logical
Structure.
order for the best possible way for the audience that's going to communicate these moments.
I don't necessarily say logical. I would say in the most experiential way. What will take them closer to the experience of the character.
Yeah, like you said about the person. Yeah. The audience. Yeah. So your moments come first, and then you go and order those moments in a way that best reflect the path that you want to take.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because
I'm really happy that BR broke that thing down, because the way she said that was really complicated. Like you had to listen it again and again to really understand what she's, talk. Like, not that she's not clear, but it's just too advanced form of English. So I like that BR just broke it down.
I don't know too many people that write this way.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not aware of.
Yeah, and
many
then of
writing
course you go back
processes.
to the moments, and then when you discover that there's a gap in the order, then you say, okay, I need a filler here, and then you probably
It's rarely like that, because I just like to keep shuffling, because okay, frankly, you may think I'm crazy, but I don't believe we really write these scripts.
it comes. Yeah,
I think we kind of just download it from somewhere, and there is a funny way in which the
That's an interesting point. I never thought like that.
pieces are there, and you just have to find the right way to fit them.
fit them. Yeah.
As if, it's like all there. You're not creating anything. It's all there. You just, assembling it all together.
And I rarely write fillers and things. That it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
You just keep locking it here and there, and you find, oh wow, okay, this can happen, and there is a certain way in which it comes together.
Right.
If not, even at script level, it might happen at edit level.
Right.
So it's just a constant process where you're constantly, reinventing the structure of the narrative. And I'm not very sort of reverent of, how do we say, the script structure as it is in the script. I might even throw out the continuity and say, no, this works better emotionally, means let's go with that.
Right.
Okay,
So
interesting.
I just think it's, it's like playing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to have that open energy.
Right.
Then I think one tries to get. I mean, at least, see, we can all theorize about it, but at the end of the day, the audience will tell you whether it's working or not.
When Wonder Woman came about, it's the result of a documentary that you were making.
No, it's a subject that I've felt very, very passionately about, and I was researching to do a documentary on it.
Okay.
But there was this opportunity to do a little fiction piece, and I said, why not? It's the same content, the same research. One can actually utilize it to create a film, which I think somehow films get under our skin much sooner, isn't it? So through fiction, some of these things, moments we create, I think people feel it in a different way.
Right.
And it's my favorite form, so why not?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the idea.
What was the documentary that you were researching?
It was about birthing. About birthing, the one thing that is so common is the most sort of natural
Is birthing a term? Never heard that before.
process happening all around us, and yet we know so little about. There's so much there that we have walked away from, as human beings, as as even creatures, which obviously multiply. There should be so much more body wisdom and things that we should be aware of. But as people who live in a so-called developed world, we are moving every day away from that, moving away from our instinct and relying more on information and technology. Whereas there is a need to turn inwards. There is a need to recognize a lot of things which we already know, but we've just kind of put a blanket on it. We'd rather trust, the processes within our body to somebody else, it's a strange thing. And I feel very deeply about these things because it's not just the whatever process you have in your birthing actually has a direct impact on the child being born and on the mother. And I think, this whole thing needs to be demystified. This is not sort of medical knowledge. It's the most natural thing happening in your body.
Right.
So it's something that all of us should have access to, that kind of understanding. And a lot of it is about trusting oneself. I think, that's the basic thing. We've moved so away from our instinct that that trust that one has in one's own wisdom is just gone. So I think we really, I would urge everybody to, whatever one is going through, to feel moments, to understand what's happening. Even if you talk about pain, pain is very often a guide. So rather than, pop a pill to kill the pain, listen to the pain, It's like I can't remember who it was it
Interesting.
Bukowski who said, sit down with your pain, drink a tea, understand it, and then send it packing. So I think these are clues for us to be able to live a more enriched life. And instead of putting a lid on it, we need to really face it and deal with it.
Interesting. I don't like taking medicines at all. I just hate, and I that's why like I prefer a homeopathy medicine way better than a allopathy. Allopathy, like, just Google the difference. I don't get into air, but yeah, I don't like it all. Even if I have to take, I try it for homeopathy. Maybe just several, like COVID and a lot of like high fever. That time I'll take. Otherwise, I just hate. I'll better if I have headache, I try to sleep and get rid of it. Or if I am not well, I'm down, I'll just sleep, take a rest, not take unnecessary medicines, and eat well, I guess. Yeah.
So yeah, so all that is a bit out there, but in the film, we're approaching it in a very simple way, where we relate to simple happenings in everybody's life.
Right.
It's a bunch of people coming together who don't know each other, and how friendships are formed, how there are no expectations, there are not even understandings about one another, and yet people can empathize, people can relate, people can connect. So I think in all my films, it's about connection at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I don't know. You guys let me know. Looking at her talking, the way she smiles, like, I don't know, it's reminding me of someone else who talks just like that, or, maybe looks similar to her. Does she have any siblings or someone, or do I don't know about? That'll be really, like, awkward if that's the case. I don't know. Like, it just, something suddenly, it just hits me like, no, the deja vu's. I've seen someone like this. I don't know. Prithviraj, no. His way of talking is very different. Okay. Maybe by the end of the interview, I'll try to get it.
Yeah.
I like to think of your films as very unique takes on relationships because they are, for example, if you take Fahad and Priya in Bangalore Days, the basis of a couple that doesn't understand one another, that's not really a new thing in movies, but the way Anjali Menon presents it, writes it, gives it to us, makes it very Anjali Menon-esque. It's something that I genuinely feel.
You threw that word at me last time.
Yeah, it's something that I think that's the most difficult thing to do because I think it's nothing is easy, but I think it's easier to write brand new things than to take in something that one has seen in some shape or form
Yeah.
and then give your own take on it that makes it feel very different, which means that you're pouring yourself into what you're doing, I guess.
I think it's the same empathy. You draw yourself into characters and you try and feel those moments and try
Right.
and share what you think would happen.
Right. When you have these multiple character narratives, as in all your films, of course, are multiple character narratives, but let's say the bigger multiple character narratives, like let's say Bangalore Days, or now Wonder Woman, where there are many people.
Ensemble cast.
Like, what to say? Is there a little extra energy needed to enter each one of them and make sure that everyone is as distinct as possible?
I've realized that I'm incapable of writing fewer characters. I
That's
start
good.
every film saying it's going to be 2 people in a room, and then, I mess it up. And
They came close.
oh, I don't know. I tend to write too many, I think. But maybe it's because I'm greedy. Maybe it's because I love people. I like groups of people. I like the whole thing of when, multiple people come together, the dynamics which are there, which creates a very, very interesting energy.
So that also is a part of world building, right? That life is not just about us or one person, right? Most films, that's what they get wrong, and that's why you say there's no depth. Then it's just about them, and every other character is just there to support. They don't have anything, they don't have their own lives. And when you have multiple characters, you need to introduce relationships, as she said, dynamics, and that makes it more believable. Yeah, there's this guy, there's this person, and there's a dynamic between them. There's a correlation. They cannot just live alone. They have to, like, a symbiotic relationship, if you may. So you have to create that to make that world believable, make these people believable. And I think that's why the stories work.
And in this one too, we had quite a few, people in the film, and each character was from a different milieu, and had their own background. I get excited by that.
Right.
Because it's really challenging to keep everybody together, and more than anything in this set, my God, the energies were peaking. So it was actually to be able to sort of control it and take it towards work, because everybody was having too much of a good time. And I'd be like, hey, we're here for work. Let's get down and do that. That energy is something that
DQ, TQ, Dulkar. Yeah, the way she talks, it a lot of reminds me of how Dulkar talks. I need to confirm that theory.
I think to be able to move it towards a constructive space, that is the challenge. But getting them together and to witness the marvelous, burst that happens, this is awesome every time. It's very inspiring.
Right.
Where, you think of people and you think, do you think this person might get along with this person? In this case, I had worked with almost all of them.
Right.
And one or two, even if I've not worked with them in an actor capacity, I've worked with them in other capacities. And I thought, it might be interesting to see, but I just did not anticipate that all of them would gel like this and literally go crazy. Because the level of warmth that you see in the film between the characters is actually something which was there on set.
Yeah.
And there's a certain, how do we say, a no holds barred kind of acceptance of one another. And they were all in such a beautiful space that way. So I just needed to get a little of that into the film. And it was their doing. They were awesome with it.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting and diverse cast because, on the one hand, you have people like Nitya Menon that you worked with, and like you said, on the other hand, you have people like Padma Priya or Amrita Subhash that you have not worked with.
Padma Priya was there in Manjari.
Oh, she was there in Manjari.
She was there, yes. And we
So,
worked
What is this, PR? What is this? Come on. Just kidding.
very closely together in the Women in Cinema Collective as well.
yeah. Is there a difference between directing an actor whose process you know versus an actor that's new to?
I think, yes, definitely. I mean, there's a certain comfort level and everything. But like I said, because I had a familiarity, it was not necessary that they had to be acting with me. It could be that we've done something else, and we've just gotten to, know each other. And there's a certain thing, I think it's more from the actor's side, that they need to have that faith. And
Yeah.
fortunately, all of them did. And they just sort of, let themselves go, and, I could do what I wanted. So that was lovely. I think once that faith is established, no matter in which format, then it's there.
Right.
So, even with my crew, it's the same.
Yeah.
People you've worked with, you may have a little bit more faith, but it builds very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also every film has its own energy, so even if you worked with a person before, there's always something new that comes into the picture.
Absolutely. Because see, with actors, they go into character and they kind of stay in character, right? A lot of them, where when they're sort of dedicated to the craft, then it'll be a slightly different person from who you've dealt with the last time.
Yeah.
So that is a pleasure to watch because you're also observing, you're understanding, and you also don't want them to be like something that they may have done before. There's a certain kind of chemistry that happens between a director and an actor, and you don't want to be replicating the same thing. You'd rather have, them evolve in a new way.
But also people, to change, right, over time. They, their new experiences, their different lifestyle, like they keep evolving. So then I think if you have worked with them like in 2015 and you work them in, with them after pandemic, like there can be a big change, between them. So I think every film, it depends on that.
So yeah.
One of the interesting things about this film,
But also, like she has worked with Parvati, right? So she knows, okay, if what I want, if I tell her that, she'll understand what I'm trying to say, you know. Like if it's a new actor, like you have to explain what's your thought process, yeah, and you have to build up that relationship where you can just say anything and she understands that. So yeah.
Is that it's largely in English, even though there are snatches of the languages that these characters
I did notice that.
speak.
Even the trailer said, that the title, it said English. So that was weird.
Because of where they come from. Mm-hmm. How did that decision come about?
See, that is something that actually it's the most natural, instinctive decision. Because see, when you and I are talking to each other, which is the language we're using, it's English.
Yeah.
And frankly, you've seen the trailer. I don't think people really notice it even until you talk to them about it. Because
yeah, I can that happened with me. I can attest to that. I was watching it and they started talking Hindi and I'm like, yeah, normal. And suddenly it hit me, oh shit, it's Hindi.
It is very instinctive for all of us to be using English. When you have characters from different places in our country, whether we like it or not, it is one of the main, languages that we're using to communicate. But for some reason, on our screens, we haven't really seen it as much.
Yeah.
For me as a writer, I could really not envisage them talking in any other language because we have, characters from South and North of India.
And maybe that's why OTT release.
In this, a lot of the characters are from South India, and there is only that one language we have in common.
Right.
So it just felt like the most natural thing to do. Luckily, our actors, each of them speak 5, 6, or 7 languages.
Yep.
And I remember we were sitting at lunch, on one of the shoot days, and I was asking each one of them, how many do you speak? How many do you speak? And 7, 5, 6. I was amazed. They really have, this way over all these.
How much do you speak?
I don't speak too many. I speak about 3, I think. Okay. Working knowledge of 1 or 2 more. That's about it.
How many do I can speak? Hindi, English, Punjabi, Konkani, French, Chamapel, Nona Prince, like. I don't think French I'm not gonna count. So 4 I can say. Yeah.
But it was really interesting to think that these people can communicate in multiple languages, and I would love to use that. So when we were doing this, we very quickly said, let's just do it the way, you and I would speak. Stick to that lingo. When you are from a particular place, you hold on to that character. Speak your English in that particular way.
Yeah.
So even when the dialogues were being written, I tried to do it in a way that it would justify. So there's Veni, who's Tamil, and there are certain kind of usages that she would have. So each person would have a certain kind of usage of how they play with English.
Right.
As a language, we've Indianized it so much. You see, in our country, there are so many different kinds of English. Right, and that process, I think, really needs to show up on our screen narratives as well.
Yeah.
I don't know why we keep it away. That's, I'm sure there are compulsions they have for certain markets and things. But today we're in a space where, OTT beams into every home, and the people who are watching it understand the language. You have subtitles on everything, you have dub languages, you have all of that. So why are we refusing to acknowledge that we actually have Indian English as a big part of our communication?
Sure.
So, for me, it's always been trying to put what is out there in the real world.
Man, these Wonder Diamonds definitely are paying a lot to Galata Plus for this.
trying to put a bit of that on screen.
Yeah.
So this is part of that.
I think there is also, you were speaking about the compulsion of different markets. I think there is also the fact that, like, let's say, Kude, Bangalore Days, anything like that. You have maybe English words in it. You have little English things, but largely the film is in one language.
Yes.
Because it's the language that the entire state speaks, as opposed to maybe people in Kochi or the metros who've had English language education. Because there are still many people who go to schools in a vernacular medium and
more than that, it's the local language.
It's the local language.
It's the language people think in.
Think in.
So therefore, you set it in that particular language.
Right. So you may end up alienating a lot of people if you make a movie entirely in English, which is why I think not many Indian English movies have been made.
So, my counter to that is that there are a lot of people who are genuinely speaking English as their first language in this country.
There are. No.
So why are we not doing it that way also?
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that on OTT.
But they also know other language, right? There are very few people who only know English in India. Yeah, I guess
sense because you're reaching out to a large population, and you have the luxury of subtitles. So even when they're lapsing into the other language or whichever
only speak English, they have subtitles, right?
the language, you have the corrective.
In fact, I'm insisting we need subs even on Indian English, because each of us speaks it a little differently.
Yeah.
So we need to have that. So the whole multiplicity of it, that is what we want to bring on.
Right.
That we use all our Indian words, we do all of that. So it's exactly the same logic about putting out the language that people think in, people feel in. So this is another one of those languages. That's all.
I think the question was just trying to ask that, people who don't know English, like they will be alienated, they'll not able to watch the film. Like how?
But the concept of doing this way came about because these women are from different places. And this is what unites them.
Yes, because this is them, multiple people coming together into one space.
Yeah.
And rather than force a language that is alien to them or they don't understand or they wouldn't naturally communicate in, it was, to take the obvious choice.
Right.
So that was the idea. And I'm very happy my producers back me up on that, because it's important to,
That's very
acknowledge
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
Because I find
important.
it very strange that we have such few and far between films which are in English.
Yeah. Hypothetically speaking, you could have done this movie with a prenatal class in Kerala, where everybody speaks Malayalam, or in Maharashtra, where everybody speaks Marathi, or in Bombay, or whatever it is, where everybody speaks Hindi, whatever it is. What energy does this bring that would not bring? Because there too, you would have a multitude of characters.
The thing is, it is actually a prenatal center in Kerala.
It is in Kerala.
It is in Kerala.
Okay.
But there too, this is what is going on. That you have multiple people from different cultures coming in together, and this is how you're communicating.
Right.
So I've not taken this and set it
Like
in
that's
some
where the
big
research
city.
comes
No,
in.
not at all.
Right.
This one is set in Kerala, but these characters are from everywhere.
And like always, you just get the best people for these roles. And I for one was like, the person who stood out the most for me was Nadia, because it's such an un-Nadia like role we've seen her in, and it was so nice to see her in that space.
Oh, she's been lovely to work with. Really nice.
Did you always have her on your radar that I want to work with her sometime?
Definitely, yes, absolutely. I think we've been wanting to work together for a while, and it was just about finding, the right space. And also she's played a very interesting character, I think, in the film, because what she's brought to it, there's a certain energy, there's a certain warmth, and at the same time there's a certain wisdom which comes with her. She's been very excited about doing this because it's not a typical, character of a certain age which is always stuck as, somebody's wife or somebody's sister or somebody's mother. This is somebody who's defining herself. And that, I think she enjoyed that very much.
Right.
So it was good fun, to collaborate with her on that.
Now, Anjali, you've written movies or rather a movie that has been directed by somebody else, Ustad's Hotel. Anwar Rashid, yes. But when it comes to your own movies, you've always been the writer. Is there a resistance to having somebody else writing a movie that you are going to direct?
It's not a resistance. It's just that I think one really needs to be in sync to, be able to collaborate with a writer. And between Anwar and me, we had that sync. We have it where, you communicate in a certain way, and you understand, and there's faith and trust is there. In the case of, me relying on another writer where they will bring their own and they will welcome my inputs as well, it's something that I'm discovering. I have tried it. I've not always, found it to be working very well. But recently, I'm collaborating with a writer on a narrative, and so far it's looking good. I'm excited actually,
Okay.
because
Interesting.
there's a beautiful energy that somebody brings in, which is not your energy, and therefore it is beautiful. Because you can get kind of, you get stayed after a point, and you want somebody else to come and infuse you with good energy. And I'm excited about that. I've always been excited about it, but it's just that I haven't been lucky enough yet, I think. Let's hope, inshallah. I hope it works out.
Can we know something
Not
else
yet,
about not
not
yet?
yet,
All
not
right.
yet.
But it's a feature.
Yes, it is.
I want to talk to you about
Not saying a single word.
two things that have been in your background. I mean, I want you to tell me how much they inform you as a filmmaker today. One is your London Film School education,
Oh,
and
okay.
because there are various points of view about does film school help or does film school does not help, or is it a hindrance because whatever it is. The second thing is your background with documentaries. How have both of these things formed the Anjali that we know today?
See, I think at the end of the day, a filmmaker is much more informed by life experience than anything else. Any
True
storyteller
that.
is. But at film school, what one gets is a sort of an insulated environment in where, in a space that you can practice your craft. When you're out in the industry, to be able to direct is not something as easy as what's
Yep.
said. But today, one has really, those shackles have been broken, because you have access to equipment which is, easy to use. You have access to a distribution system that if you make something, you can actually put it out there. So all
Yep.
of those old theories are gone. It's a new world. So it's for anybody's taking. So one really doesn't, I don't think you need to go to film school to be a good filmmaker. I don't think you need to go to film school to be a filmmaker at all. But a film school offers you a certain opportunity. At the end of the day, does everybody who goes to film school become a filmmaker? No.
No.
So
Yep.
people who want the opportunity and who are seeking to express themselves will find it anyway.
Right.
And in today's world, given, all the tutorials which are out there, I find myself so often, looking up these tutorials to learn new things. Because it's not a field where we can just sit back and relax. You have to keep learning these new things.
Yeah.
And that is very exciting when you're passionate about your
Yeah.
craft. So that, I think, today is for the taking. It's really not about film school. It's about how driven one is towards the medium. And I think all of those old notions are gone. I really think people have much more access to the medium. And as a result, there's a lot more creative voices out there. So it's a very exciting time to watch content as well. So it's not in some conventional form. I mean, I went to film school about 20 years ago. So it's important to acknowledge
That's a
that
long
things have
time
moved
back.
on. It's no longer the same. So half my ideas will be old fogey ideas, but I need to keep reinventing myself, learning new things. So recently, somebody was talking about writing a web series, and I asked them, how do you imagine that can write a web series just because I can write a feature? So yeah, it's all the same thing. I said, no, it cannot be the same thing. It's a very different form.
Yeah.
So I actually went and did a course on web series writing, and I learned
Wow.
so many things. So this kind of constant updation of skills, I think, is something that everybody should do. So it's not about where you learn the skill from. It's that you need to learn the skill and you acknowledge that.
Right.
So that's my school, frankly.
And documentaries?
Documentaries, yes. I think as people who are trying to imitate life, as people who are trying to recreate moments, our observation and our documenting of real life happening, cinema veris is very important. And it's not because you are a documentary filmmaker. It's not that. In daily life, what is it that we notice? What do we see in people? What do we hear? What are we reading? All of these things in some way have to seep into your narrative, because that is what gives it legs. And that is what will move people, because it's connected to what they're doing. And that kind of awareness is very important. One of my favorite documentaries is Ken Burns. I really enjoy.
I'm not a documentary guy at all. Either I've seen or like thought of doing one. So like I've seen few on Netflix, which are good ones, but they're not like totally documentary kind of things.
How he captures moments, and how he uses, already documented material, like photographs.
Yeah.
How he uses them to tell his story. And within photographs, from one corner of the photograph to the other corner, the gentleman creates emotion.
Yeah, I mean, I think even a simple pan, a Ken Burns pan across a photograph is so thought out,
It's
thought
so
through.
telling, that he forces us to look at things from a new dimension, see connections which you may have missed. And that, I think, is wonderful. And I think anybody
I need to check him out then. His work out, not him.
who is equipped with that is only the better.
Right.
Because in fiction, this is what we're trying to recreate, right? It's the real thing. In fantasy, yes, you can really go all out. But in fiction, where you are wanting it to relate to an everyday experience, I think that kind of a background really helps. I've actually spent more time assisting on documentaries than making it myself.
Yeah.
The few I have made, I've felt deeply about, and that's why I've done them. But while you're assisting, to watch where the eye of the director is going and what they're trying to capture, and when they're editing it and putting it together, which are the moments that are actually stringing this narrative together, that's such an interesting process. And eventually, when we're doing film, if you've noticed, each of my films will have some little things which are just randomly shot on the street, and where we're just, picking things up, and they add so much more texture to the film.
Yeah.
That, I think, is lovely. That is what really gives us, pegs to hold on to the real experience. So.
Yeah. When I was speaking to Alphonse Putran, he said he would spend a lot of time chasing a butterfly or something like that, for a 2-3 second shot, simply because he felt some instinct told him that that's he needs that
Right.
that butterfly,
Yes.
for that texture that you talk about.
A lot of things where, just simple textures, how a tree looks, how a leaf is, these things, they matter to us. When we see them, they impact us. There is a certain impact that is created. There's a certain emotion which is evoked.
Right.
And when those textures come into our frame, for that moment, that leaf is the hero.
Yeah.
You're telling a narrative through that. So when I think we were having some conversation about miniatures in my film. Now these little things, they connect to us because at some point we've all done that.
Yeah.
So you are propelled into your own resources, your own experience. And I really relish bringing those inanimate things in, and even simple shots of people on the
I'll try to pay attention to these things when I watch films again.
street. These are all things which really orient us, right, into that world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing definitely comes from the documentary
Documentaries.
space.
Are you good at looking back at your films and finding out what perhaps you could have done better?
I mean, I can always do better. It's not. That's I'm never really, let's say, happy with how things are. I'm constantly finding that, this could have been better, that could have been better, and I try to do one thing where I try to put down learnings from a film.
You actually do that?
Yeah, I do that. I've started doing it past few films because, this is something that I should be careful about. I should be mindful about, because then in my next film, I don't want to discover it on set. I want a reminder saying that, if I've goofed
Interesting.
up last time, remember this, learn a lesson, move on. Because when you're making a film, I see it as a privilege. And I wanted to give it my best.
Sure.
And for, lapses in memory and lapses in learning, simply because I have so much time between my films, I think it's important to remind myself about things that I want to improve upon.
Right.
So I see that as a constant task.
Yeah.
And it's not something that one can put on the back burner. You're constantly trying to do it a little better every time. So yeah, watching my films is, I'm not very great with watching it because I find I'm not very detached. I'm constantly in memory of how something happened, and why something happened, and how this could have been better, and how that could have been better.
Interesting.
So I'm not great with just sitting and watching it.
Can you tell us about any one learning from any one of your films that you jotted down and said, I should not
Please
do
don't
this
say the
again"?
first film.
So
I've not
many,
seen it.
actually, so many. But I think, okay, this is an incident with my first film. I had key protagonists who were children, and for some 15 days we shot with children. So I was fresh out of film school. I had a storyboard. It was very clear that this is what I want. This is the shot I want, and all of
So
that.
not what you're doing today.
So not what I'm doing today. And in the first film, after shooting with them for about 10, 15 days, I'm watching the shot as it's happening. It's exactly like my storyboard. The kids are doing exactly what I'm telling them to do. And I
It's not
found
looking good.
myself completely bored.
You're bored.
I'm bored. I'm sitting on set thinking, this is so boring. I'm not enjoying myself. This is not working for me. But I didn't know what to do with that feeling. So called up a friend of mine, Saket Chaudhary, who's a classmate. And Saket had just done his first feature before mine. And I called him up and I said, hey, listen, something weird. Everything's working and it's looking exactly like my storyboard. And I'm just bored. Like, what's wrong? I'm not able to make it better or anything. And he asked me, are you leaving enough space to get surprised? I said, what do you mean? And he said, see, when you've planned things, but if you don't give any space for surprise, how will surprise happen? And I sat down and thought about it and I said, actually, that's right. And because these were children, they would, very easily, they're malleable. So they'll go in the direction that you're sending them in. And therefore, they weren't actors who turned around and say, but I don't want to do that. They weren't that. And I realized my
That's
process needs to
interesting.
change. I need to not only give room, I have to help them feel that they can do whatever they want.
Right.
That they need to celebrate it. They need to own it, not me. I think
Interesting.
that happened from that day. So these kind of things, I don't ever want to go back there again. I don't ever want to, over guide. I don't want to ever push people in one direction which is only mine. If there's another direction evolving, let's look at it more.
Right.
Why is it evolving? Because I'm trusting them, right, for their process. So it's and children are such lovely guides, actually.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, the next week onwards, the actors came in and they started doing their own thing. So it was great fun.
Yeah. What's so surprising for me that so many modern day filmmakers believe this to be the right way. That is, plan do a basic plan and then pretty much leave it to like a little bit of chaos to kind of enter the thing. But one of my favorite filmmakers, Hitchcock, he pretty much storyboarded everything, and all he wanted the actors to do was exactly what he wanted. And he's made about, so many of his films are absolute masterpieces that you can see again and again. Yeah. But you also realize that they are the result of extraordinary control. Yeah. Like almost dictatorial control.
Absolutely.
I'm just not able to wrap my head around the fact that somebody did that and got those kinds of performances,
No, you're totally right. I mean, he's from that end of the spectrum where, there's this complete control and he has some famous quotes about actors being,
cattle and
yes,
all that.
All of that. But that's a different process.
Yeah.
See, creative processes are many. So I don't think we should get out of one box to climb into another.
No. I'm not saying which is better or worse, but I'm just trying to, imagine, because
true, one really wonders that, oh my God, how was that, executed?
And how did he escape the boredom of shooting? Because he's planned it out. So shooting becomes just a process of execution. Exactly what, so there's no,
Okay, I have an answer, but my thoughts on that, but I don't think I should put it out. Little controversial. So maybe it can be also, the time he was in, he, like, the way he dressed, like, he was like a big guy. So maybe his thought process came from that I know everything, that it has to be what I do. And yeah, it was right. Like whatever he did, it worked. It's the classics. It's the masterpieces, as he said. Maybe that's one point of it. And today, no one has this doubt. There's no one has that superiority that I know everything and that's what you have to do. Like maybe Sanjay Leela Bhansali, maybe he's known for, but I've heard actors say he told them do something, like do something new. I don't know, do something, and they did something and that worked. So creating an environment for that is also important as a director. But yeah, it's always depends on person to person, their way of thinking and what they want. Like Vikramaditya Motwani is someone I really look up to. He goes planned, like totally storyboarding everything has to be the way he wants. And I'm sure he does give some freedom, but he is like like a dictator in a way, you can say. And Anurag Kashyap has said that, he is totally opposite of that. He just goes on the set and just, change the scene at that moment itself. And it hates, the actors coming prepared and suddenly they are shooting this scene and like, no, I don't want to shoot this scene first. So, he likes that chaos. So it's fascinating.
I just wonder
So the collaboration, I'm sure, would get limited even with the crew. With the crew and the cast and everything. But I also think it's a lot to do with personality.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where you bring your personality to your set and to your work. So perhaps in his personality, the dominant need was to control.
Control, yeah.
And that was being satisfied, and therefore he was able to bring out work which was great quality and yet satisfied his need.
Yes.
My individual need may be to connect more than to control, or to explore.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's I think we bring our personalities in. And that need, when a filmmaker's need is satisfied to some extent, I think that is what will.
I think she knows herself really well. I can say that watching the interview that she spoke a lot of things which is so personal, but she has articulated all of it really well. She knows what she's talking about, what she feels, what's the process. It's like, like some people, like some interviews, they don't know, they don't have an answer to things, and just trying to come up with something and it's not really making some sense. But she's very, like it's all like broken down, it's all done, it's all ready to be shared.
Fill into the work.
Right. So there's probably a greater chance that someone like Hitchcock might go wrong less. And because you're trying, you might slip up a little more, but your process is more satisfying to you.
To me.
Yeah.
To me,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
To someone like Hitchcock, obviously it's all crazy.
Yeah.
So it's these are totally not comparable.
Yeah.
And
it just sprung to my head that because when you were saying about, you were talking about the children and how bored you were of the storyboards, the first person that sprang to mind was
Right.
him. So
No, I totally get that. Film school, that's the first thing you're shown, the Hitchcock's retrospective, because you need to know all of those films. And the more I find, a few years ago, I was taking my son to pottery class, and I had to be there for an hour. So, I had nothing to do. So the teacher said, why don't you play with some clay? And she handed clay, and I have never done any clay work. And it was the first time I was handling clay, and I realized that, okay, I'm going to make something. I don't know what it is. Today, depending on how soft the clay is, what the weather is like, what my hands feel like doing, what my mood is, I'm going to shape this into something. And by the end of an hour...
Wow, that's a great analogy for filmmaking.
Did I know at the beginning of the hour what it would be? No. But by the end of it, there is a functionality to it. There is a certain appearance to it. There is a form to it. All of that is happening. And it's happening in a very physical, instinctive way. And it just made me think that, oh my God, this is such a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about making a film like that you're not really sure. I think there are a lot of filmmakers who do that and they make wonderful cinema. So,
just listening to that, she has already thought of all these things. Maybe had some discussions and it came out and, like formed answers to, like, or maybe she's coming up just here. Who knows?
It's a process which is very difficult when you're in a collaborative medium.
Right.
If you're an artist and you're a sculptor and you're doing it yourself, it's fine. But here, 100 people are working with you and they're wondering, where are you going?
That's why Prithviraj said excruciating. We've come full circle now. You see?
Fortunately for me, it's that I have a crew that backs me up.
Yeah.
That jumps with me. And yes, I put them through hell possibly, but our whole thing is to just keep prepping to enable the improvisation. And that is when, when a shot is done, I'm not the only one recognizing the honesty. We'll all look at each other and think, yes, we got it. So it's that sync is beautiful. So yeah, I think it's just that constant reinventing. So today it's clay, maybe tomorrow it'll be something else.
Yes, that's a lovely way to put it. Next year will be 15 years since Manjari Kuru came out. 2008,
2012 actually, because it released in 2012. But yes, the festival thing happened.
Yeah, in 2008.
Yeah. Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
We are making everyone feel old.
Oh, that's very few films.
No, but it's also a long time.
Yeah, it is. It is.
What's it been like?
Wow, I never thought of it that way. I just feel like I'm still in very early days. You know, it's been a very interesting ride. I feel very privileged to be able to work in this medium.
Yeah.
It's something which is, for me, very personal, and yet something that I am able to, you know, connect with people I don't know. There's a very strange combination there.
Yeah.
You know, and someone sitting somewhere, if they're moved by something we've put in a film, that for me is the biggest blessing. It's the biggest pleasure. That's what makes me do what we're trying to do. And yeah, it's just been that basically right from day one. That's what the thing is. It's to form that connection, and I hope to do narratives which help me get there more.
You just said very few films. When I said 15 years, do you want to start making films faster?
No, I in the past in those 15 years, 11 have been with a little boy at home, and that's my role where I am even more privileged. So I've been very fortunate that I could spend that kind of time with my son. But now that he's grown up, I'm hoping that we'll together make more films. And yes, I think the number's going to go up a bit. I've ended up shooting 3 films this year. So
Oh,
What do you say?
amazing.
yeah. So we did this feature. I shot a documentary and also another short for an anthology.
Nice.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so my ratio's changing slightly.
Very nice, Anjali. Thank you so much, and really looking forward to seeing Wonder Woman. I love
Look
the title.
forward to your feedback.
Yeah, no, the title is very interesting, and there's almost like a superpower-like quality that the title suggests, which I'm sure the movie's not going to have. In terms of they're going to be about regular people, right?
It's about regular people who maybe have superpowers.
Very nice.
Wait and see.
Wait and see. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that was a really, really fun interview. Really insightful, really, thought provoking in a sense of, how you look at direction, how you look at filmmaking, writing, the process, building a connection with the cast, crew, telling a story, getting to know people. So that it's very, very interesting and different, how we generally perceive what's direction in filmmaking, right? So that was pretty interesting. I liked the dynamic between BR and her. It felt very friendly and casual and, fun. So that was really nice. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Wonder Woman. Maybe I'll try my best if we can get Anjali Menon on the main channel and do a live discussion on the film after it's out. We'll try that. I'll try to reach out. Maybe it works, it doesn't, it's okay. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Until check out this video next. If you like this, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.